What's going on, everybody? Welcome back. Today we are doing a power steering pump on my 2007 BMW E90 335i with the N54. So this is going to be a little more of a how-to, not our normal stuff. So before we start, there's a few things you need to know about these BMWs with the N52, N54s, N55s. That when you have a horrible whining noise, it doesn't necessarily mean that it is going to be your power steering pump. Now, when the alternator bearings wear out, they do make a very similar noise. I'm fairly confident it's my power steering. How do you know it's your power steering? Well, it does have that pissed off screaming noise, but when I'm driving the car and I have my hands on the wheel, it's pissed off and screaming into my hands. You can feel the whole steering system just being mad. It fights me, it's not working very well. I did try replacing the fluid. I would start there. That doesn't work. Sounds like you're doing a power steering pump. And before you order a power steering pump, there are two important differences. You need to know whether your car has active steering or not, and to tell you the difference, you can look at the reservoir caps. The non-active steering has a weird little spidery looking cap, usually has a green tag, and the active steering is usually a canister. With active steering and the vehicle is on, it should be about one turn from left lock to neutral, and neutral should be one turn to right lock on the steering wheel. Also at low speeds in parking lots, it should feel weird and not like any other car. So, that being said, let's jump right into it. Alright boys, so we're jumping right into this. We have a lot of stuff gone already. So I removed the shroud, had to undo these bolts to drop the inlet tube on the front to gain access to the serpentine belt tensioner. While I was in here, I went ahead and cracked the bolts loose for the power steering pulley before I removed the belt. So I went ahead and drained the reservoir as well, got some fluid out of there, so I'm not worrying about a liter of fluid. While we're in here, we're pretty much replacing everything we have. We're doing a high pressure line, whatever that is. Return. Not a bad idea to do your reservoir as well, since there's a filter in there, as well as our pump, which comes with no brackets or pulley, so we will have to swap those over. Underneath the car, I've already unbolted my high pressure line, dropped the sway bar. How old is the 2007?
Huh?
That's 14 years?
2007?
14 years, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So over the course of 14 years, I have lost the bottom tray, so that's pretty easy. I'm laying in oil. Nice. You will have to unbolt the transmission cooler with a single Torx. Get the rad fans out of the way on the driver's side. Right above the steering rack, this is your high pressure line going up to your pump, and there's going to be 4 bolts on there that are E-Torx, but you can use an 8 or a 10 mil, I believe. There's going to be 2 bolts on the back, and then there's going to be 2 that you can get from the front of the engine here. Pretty straightforward, so we'll rip everything apart and get her out. Alright guys, we've been at this for quite a while, it feels like. Starting at the top, we undid the power steering reservoir. It's got these little sleeves that love to fall out, so keep that in mind, don't lose them. We disconnected our top hose just to get it out from the bottom. Like I said, I am replacing this, and they do have these crimp-on styles. Honestly, if you're doing this, I would recommend going to pick up some hose clamps to replace these. So I've taken off this feed line, the larger one. At the top, this one I am replacing, that does go down to the power steering pump. Underneath, I did have to take off, there is a small bracket on the back that is 2 bolts, and then there's one on the front that is 3. Those are Torx 40, I believe. If you have an automatic transmission, this giant trans cooler is going to be in your way the entire time, but I was able to sneak it out through the back here to get the high pressure power steering line off. This is a banjo bolt. It looks like that. Just gonna let that drain. That is a 22 mil. I had to take the brackets off to slide the pump back enough that I could get a wrench on it back here, and that is on actually very tight, so keep that in mind since it does have crush washers in it. That being said, this is our power steering pump out. We have our new power steering pump here. You can see that this was the bracket on the front. You're gonna have these 3 bolts here. One of these is very tight to the hub where the pulley sits, so I did have to use an Allen key setup just to sneak that in there. I couldn't use a socket for that. The back one, make sure you set this up the right way. It is facing the right way on mine. all the casting numbers are facing towards the block. So it sits like that. This is going to be that 22 mil banjo bolt that goes through your high pressure hose to the power steering pump. And then up here is going to be the feed line that came off on this pump here. And again on these are the crimped on style. You can pop this off, you don't have to cut it, you just pinch them together right here and then they'll spring off. Again, I would recommend replacing those with hose clamps. So that being said, with your new power steering pump, it should come with a box full of crush washers and seals. So make sure you put those on, just match it up. You do want to replace these every single time. In my case, I have about 12 extras because this hose came with them, my pump came with them, and this hose came with 2. So we're going to go ahead, the reservoir is going to go on last. I'm going to remove the next hose off of that. Take out my old reservoir. We're going to start putting this pump in. Probably going to put the hose coming from the reservoir on the pump first, just so I can thread it up. I don't have to deal with that, and tighten it up first. At that point, I'm going to finish taking off the high pressure power steering hose. I have a feeling that's going to be another 22 mil. And as you can see right above your steering rack, that's going to be it right up here. So I'm going to go ahead and crack that loose. I can use a socket and a breaker bar there. That's going to be nice and easy. Same thing, that's going to have some crush washers. Make sure you replace those and don't lose them. Make sure it goes on the right way. Just makes a sandwich, so it'll be bolt, crush washer, hose, crush washer, and then what it's going into. So be very careful threading these in. These love to cross thread. So make sure you do it by hand first. And make sure you put the hose on in the correct orientation so you don't put on backwards or anything weird. That's pretty much it. Again, this uses these brass crush washers or copper crush washers, so you do have to tighten this down pretty tight. Obviously you don't want to strip it out or anything, because that would be very bad for your new power steering pump, and it'll just leak like crazy, so be very careful with that. Make sure your pulley's nice and clean if you're reusing it. And then at that point, you want to make sure you use the correct power steering fluid. Usually it says on the cap, apparently mine doesn't, so I'll look at my original cap, make sure I use the correct fluid. It's either ATF or some number, CF 110, something crazy like that. Active power steering is probably a little bit different, so keep that in mind. Once we slam this in, you do not want to start this up dry. You want to fill up the reservoir, and there is a bleeding process, so I'm going to fight my way through this, get this pump back in here, and I'll show you guys how to do that. So let's get to her. Alright guys, so we're in here right now. We have the front end up, suspended on jack stands so the wheels can turn freely. Topped her up with some fluid, and we're currently spinning the wheel all the way left until it stops, and then all the way right. And you can hear a lot of wicked noises. You want to make sure that the vehicle is currently off. And after about 2 minutes, you'll have to top up the reservoir. Make sure not to overfill it. Then after that, you're just going to be working it back and forth. And this is like a 15-minute process, so take it slow. You have to go until there's no more bubbles for like 2 minutes straight. And then you can fire up the car and continue bleeding it. Make sure there's no noises, and check for leaks out of those banjo bolts on the power steering line. Now that we've been doing this for a while, we'll go check the fluid level. So she's a little thirsty, so now we top her up and hope for the best. Alright guys, so once you do that, throw some fluid in there, make sure you top it up. You do not want to overfill it, it's just going to go everywhere. So once you have it topped up, you're going to be ready to fire it up. So I would start it while it's on jack stands. You can crawl underneath and you'll see better if it's leaking. It'll be very obvious if it's leaking. And then you're pretty much set to go. Put everything together, make sure you torque it down, take it for a drive. I would leave the bottom skid plate off for a while just to check for leaks. After a couple days, if the level's not going down and it's not leaking, then you're set. If it is still moaning when you fire it up, turn it off immediately and just keep bleeding it. It might take you a little bit longer depending on what parts you replaced or did not replace. So, I hope this helped you guys out, and thanks for watching. Catch you guys in the next one.